And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Hellenic Public Radio, Cosmos FM 91.5 on WNYE in New York. I'm your host, Anna Eliopoulos. You can also hear us online streaming at www.cosmosfm.org and, of course, via the TuneIn app by searching Cosmos FM. And I am very excited to have with me the author of a book that is really a fascinating tale of survival and of really overcoming adversity. Angelo Metropoulos. Angelo, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
I want to start out with saying, and I want to get into your background a little bit later, but you're not an author by trade, but you felt motivated enough to tell a story, and a very incredible story, enough that you felt the need to write a book. So start out by telling us, what was the reason behind writing this story, The Wild and Twisted Branch?
Well, it was really a promise that drove me, a promise that I made to my father. He was, as he got a little older, the latter years of his life, he became obsessed with telling his story, as he often said. And toward that goal, he began to write his memoirs, and he wrote very meticulously, about 40 plus pages, handwritten in Greek, of course, basically describing the events and things that happened to him during those terrible years in his life. The other part of it was I spent a lot of time with him in his latter years, and we discussed a lot of those events, and he gave me a lot more insight and descriptions of the events and what happened. And so during that time, he was frustrated that he couldn't write a book or tell his story, and so I made him a promise that I would do that. And so this is the result of that promise. I also had a personal interest in writing the book, in the sense that I was really mystified. Why would people who grew up together in a small village, who knew each other all their lives, why would they turn against each other and with such hate and murder in their hearts?
So just to pivot to that, because the story of your father and what the book is based on is not just his survival story during the German occupation of World War II, but it's also about a chapter that in Greek history that we as Greeks have a tendency to gloss over, which is the civil war that ensued.
Yeah, many people don't want to talk about it. Even when I was doing interviews, when I went to Greece, there was some reluctance to get into the details. But it's very interesting how that has evolved.
And I mentioned it to you in one of our conversations prior to this interview that it's kind of been a resurgence in bringing this to the forefront and talking about it, especially in Greek art and cinema and obviously literature, as with your book, about how a lot of people are turning back to that time to try to either reflect on certain instances in our own times or to try to learn and avoid a history repeats itself type situation from that time. Why was it that you felt the need to share that particular part of your father's life and not just stop at the grandiose Greek victory over the Nazis in World War II?
Well, the story really begins in 1943, long before the Germans left Greece. In December of 1943, it was almost 2 years of occupation, and if you read modern Greek history, you find that most of it says that the Civil War started in 1946. But when you talk to people like my father and people of his generation, you find that the war started much earlier and part of the occupation. I think a lot of people today want to understand what happened. People I know in Athens, for example, had no idea how what was going on in the village. The other part of that is history tells us that events and places and people and battles and that sort of thing. What is really missing are the personal stories. And as people are getting older, like my father, and passing away, if you don't talk to them and if you don't capture their stories, that part of history is lost forever. And you're right, history will repeat itself if we're not very careful. So I think people are very interested from that perspective.
And the thing that I like about this book and what I've gathered from it is just it's not in any way, shape, or form a dry factual retelling. There is a lot of action, for lack of a better word, in this book. Just, it's one near-death experience to another.
Exactly. You'd think my father had 15 lives because he just manages to get out from one tight spot to another. He makes a decision, and he gets to live another day. It's that kind of a story, and it doesn't seem to stop. It just keeps going on and on and on until finally after the December fighting in Athens, which he was there, finally ends the conflict for that period.
How much did you need to embellish, or was his story just so, for lack of a better word, unbelievable enough that you were able to stick very close to the original telling? How much creative license did you take?
I took some creative license because I had to make the narrative flow. My father wrote the structure of events, and I was fascinated through my interview process to substantiate and corroborate a lot of the events that he described in the book, and I was able to stay very true to that. A lot of the people that I talked to were basically able to give me the same relative description of the events. I have to say that just about everything that's in the book, I've been able to corroborate. So I feel very comfortable that it's accurate. Now, I did take some literary license in I had to make it flow, and so I did. I embellished here and there, but overall the facts are the facts, and they are accurate.
Mm-hmm. And I also find it kind of great that you do delve into the topics, because again, a lot of times these stories are, especially when they come from memoirs, are just so insulated within the time and the experiences of the person that's living them. But you go broader, and you even kind of set the geopolitical scene of the time by explaining, for example, what part the United States played in World War II for a country like Greece, and kind of the factors of the Cold War mechanics during the time of the Greek Civil War. Why did you think that was an important aspect to add?
Well, it basically it's a story that I think is not about just what happened in a Greek village or what happened in Greece. It's basically a historical review of in many ways, human nature, and that the events happened were happening really in a very global sense. the communist attempt, if you will, to take over Greece. The British, on the other hand, wanting the return of the previous government. The war between, or the battle, if you will, in the ensuing Cold War that emerged between the communism and the free world. Those are all wrapped up in Greece, in a sense, in just a very small number of months. So it has very, very, very broad, I think, understandings of what can happen to a small country like Greece.
Now, you did the very brave thing of releasing this book this year during a time where everything has been upended. And I know probably your decision to write it and then self-publish it had nothing to do with the weird times that we live in the pandemic. But, now that it is out and it's been out for a little while, do you think that people are once again diving into books, or what has been the response so far from the release of the book, being that this is just such a time where we kind of thrive for stories of human communication and contact, or even just to escape into a different time period?
Well, the response from friends that have read the book is really amazing. A number of people have told me how they relate to it, and how well they're able to communicate and relate to stories of their own, their fathers and grandfathers and aunts and uncles that lived during that period. And I think people are interested. The sales of the book have been better than I expected. I mean, they've not been great. I'm not a great marketer or publicist, but still, I'm very pleased with the results and the positive feedback I'm getting from people. And I think the fact that people are locked up, so to speak, and confined to their homes. I mean, that certainly the book gives them an opportunity to read, and it's an escape. So I'm very pleased with that.
And we just have a few minutes left, but you finally accomplished this promise and told your father's story, but you have your own rich life story to tell, because you worked on something so historic.
Well, yeah, I was very fortunate. I guess sometimes I tell people that I left Greece as an 8-year-old, and basically a barefoot little boy. And 16 years later, I'm working on the Apollo project.
That is,
and that's the American
so incredible. Yes, absolutely, it is.
So it's yeah. I've been very fortunate. I've had a great life, and I've been I was at the right place at the right time. So it has worked out very nicely. But I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to be working on the Apollo project and being and doing the test procedures for getting the Saturn V ready for launch. So it's been quite a journey for me as well.
Well, I have to imagine that your family's been pressuring you, or at least giving you ideas that maybe your own story should be written down.
Yeah, they have.
Well,
I've started a second book. I don't know if I'll ever finish it, but it starts with my life in the village and continues on. The plan is to relate how I wound up working on the Apollo project. So,
That would be something to see. And if it is anything as riveting as the book that I have in my hands, it would be a treasure to be able to read. If anybody in our audience wants to know where they can find your book, the story of your father and how he survived the Greek Civil War, it's entitled The Wild and Twisted Branch. Where can they go to find it?
basically, just search on Amazon.com, and there's a Kindle version for $2.99, and there's a paperback version for $9.99. I priced it low because I want people to read it. I'm not trying to make a lot of money.
No, and I highly recommend it because it really is a fascinating story. Again, as I mentioned, it's at times unbelievable. At times unbelievable that these were the real life experiences of somebody. But it certainly is a testament not only to the spirit of your father, but to the spirit of all the people that really lived through so much trauma from one war to the next, and managed to survive and come out of it on the other side as better people.
Yeah, and it's when I'd heard the stories all my life from my father, and then when I started to put the book together, one episode after another, it just started to flow. It just amazed me that he was able to survive. Like I said, I think he had 15, 20 lives, whatever it was, but it's an amazing story from that standpoint.
Okay. So if you want to pick up your copy of The Wild and Twisted Branch by Angelo Metropoulos, you can go on to Amazon and you can get the e-version or the physical version in your hands.
I would like to encourage the young people out there that are listening to sit down and talk with their parents, their grandparents, their aunts, uncles, all the old people next door, whoever it is, and learn about their life, their stories. It's amazing how much they will learn. The other thing I think that's important that parallels what the book is all about is that it's how easy it is for us to lose our freedom. As you read what happened in a remote village in Greece in 1944, give some thought as to what's happening to our country today. The two are not that far apart. So I'll leave that with that comment.
Well, thank you so much again for being on the program. And we wish you and your book the best of luck. And hopefully we'll get to read another Angelo Metropoulos book, maybe one that's a little bit closer to home in terms of your own life experiences.
Well, thank you, Anna. I really appreciate the time and your interest. And I wish you all the best.